for months, 26 contractor bags, and one woman who smiled at me every single week while she used my property like it was her personal landfill. That's how this whole thing starts. And the crazy part? I didn't lose my temper. I didn't yell. I didn't slam doors or threaten lawsuits. I got quiet. And if you've ever known someone who gets real quiet when something's wrong, you already know that's when things get interesting. So let me take you back to the first Saturday morning, because at the beginning, I honestly thought it was an accident. It was about 9 a.m., one of those calm suburban mornings where the air still smells like dew and cut grass, and I walked out with my coffee to check on the tomatoes I planted along the side of the house. That strip between my fence and the hedge, about 30 feet long, tucked away, not visible from the street unless you're standing at a weird angle in my driveway. And I just stopped. The entire strip was buried, not sprinkled, not lightly dusted, buried under a thick, wet, 2-inch carpet of bright green grass clippings. Fresh, heavy, plastered against the base of my plants, sitting on top of mulch I'd laid down the weekend before. I stood there for a full minute, thinking maybe the wind had done something bizarre. Maybe a landscaping crew nearby had been careless. It took me 40 minutes to clean up. Annoying, sure, but I shrugged it off. Then it happened again the next Saturday. Same spot, same thick blanket. This time some of it had blown up onto my patio table and stuck to the grill cover like it belonged there. Now I was suspicious. By the third Saturday, it wasn't just the side yard. My car, a dark blue sedan parked in the driveway, was dusted with fine green particles. And somehow, through a cracked window, there were clippings sitting on my driver's seat. I picked them up and just stared at them like they'd personally offended me. That's when I walked the perimeter of my fence and noticed something I hadn't paid attention to before, a small gap at the base of the panel near the street. 3, maybe 4 inches. And right there at that gap was a concentrated mound of clippings that looked pushed, not blown. I crouched down and looked through. On the other side, Karen's lawn. Now, you need to understand Karen. Mid-50s, always dressed like she was about to host a gardening segment on a local morning show. The kind of woman who brought homemade cookies to HOA meetings and then spent 40 minutes explaining why your hedges were slightly uneven. She'd lived on the street over a decade, knew everybody, smiled at everyone, asked about my tomatoes like she genuinely cared. So when I knocked on her door that Saturday, I was calm, polite, gave her every opportunity for it to be accidental. She opened the door, bright and cheerful. "Oh my goodness, really? That's so strange," she said, stepping outside with me. "My mower shouldn't be throwing anything that far." She shook her head, concerned. Promised she'd be more careful. Big smile. Next Saturday, the biggest pile yet, 3 inches deep in places. Clear rake marks through the fence gap. That's when something shifted. I didn't knock on her door again. I didn't argue. I took photos. I documented the fence gap. I documented the piles. Then I sat at my kitchen table and started thinking. Because here's what bothered me. The volume didn't make sense. Her yard wasn't big enough to produce that much clippings every week. I've mowed lawns. I know what a normal yard yields. This was more. Then one Wednesday, working from home, I heard a mower outside. Looked out the window, and there's Karen mowing a house 3 doors down. Headphones on, water bottle clipped to her belt. Efficient rows, like she'd done this 1,000 times. Later she was 2 houses down, then another, for lawns in one afternoon. Bagging clippings, loading them into her SUV. That splinter in my brain? It dug deeper. That Friday my side yard was oddly clean. I almost thought maybe she'd stopped. Saturday morning, before 8 a.m., I watched through the curtain. Karen mowed her own yard first, filled her green bin, stood there looking at it full. Then she looked toward my fence. She went in her garage, came back with a rake, crouched at the gap, and methodically pushed 3 bags worth of clippings into my yard. 3 passes. Stood up, brushed off her knees, went inside. I didn't move for 90 seconds. Then I ordered 2 cameras. That was the beginning of Act 1, the part where the tension really sets in. Because I realized this wasn't laziness. It wasn't wind. It was a system. Karen was running a cash lawn mowing operation, and my hidden side yard was her disposal solution. So I started my own system. Every Saturday, I collected every blade of grass. Heavy-duty black contractor bags. I filled them, tied them, labeled them with a date, stacked them in my garage. Bag 1, Bag 2, Bag 3. I didn't know exactly what I was building toward yet, but I knew patience would matter. Then came the twist. One Sunday, I ran into Phil 2 houses down. He mentioned he'd switched to a local lawn service. Cash only. Very reasonable. Who? Oh, Karen. Half the street used her. Half. I drove to the grocery store in silence, doing math in my head. This wasn't just overflow from her yard. This was multiple properties. Every weekend. And then, just when I thought I understood the scale, I caught footage of her at 11 p.m. one Wednesday night. Not dumping. Inspecting. Phone flashlight through the fence gap, scanning my yard. Checking accumulation levels. She wasn't just dumping. She was managing capacity. That's when Act 2 began, the counterstrike. Because at an HOA meeting a few weeks later, Karen stood up in front of everyone and proposed formalizing her lawn service as the official neighborhood contract. She had a logo, testimonials, a rate sheet. If approved, she'd have guaranteed income and access to every property, which meant my side yard would become her full-scale landfill. I didn't say a word that night, but I knew exactly when I would. For weeks later, I borrowed a pickup truck, 26 contractor bags, 4 months of clippings, trimmings, mulch, even some bonus pet fur she'd gotten lazy with, stacked neatly on the patio outside the HOA meeting room, each labeled with dates. I printed a simple sign, Karen's lawn care disposal site, my yard. Then I went inside, grabbed coffee, sat in the back. When new business came up, Dennis, the board president, nodded to me. I stood up and said, calmly, before you vote, there's some operational information you should see. Open the patio doors. 26 bags. The room went silent. That, I said, is 4 months of material deposited into my side yard through a fence gap. I have camera footage of every incident. People craned their necks. Phil looked like he'd swallowed a rock. Karen turned at her chair, and her face, I'll never forget it, went from confusion to recognition to calculation and then red. Phil stood up. Wait, where do my clippings go? Bag 12 through 14, I said. June. Someone laughed. Karen finally stood. Calm voice. Claimed misunderstanding. Someone in the back said, clarify, 26 bags. The vote was tabled immediately. 3 days later, her proposal was withdrawn. And here's the thing. Since that meeting, not a single blade of grass has crossed that fence. Not one. The gap? I sealed it properly. Karen no longer waves. No more cookies at meetings. No more smile. And here's where the moral part sneaks in. Not the preachy kind, just the truth I learned sitting in my garage staring at those bags. It wasn't the grass that bothered me most. It was the smile. It was being lied to politely. Being treated like I wouldn't notice. Like I'd accept inconvenience quietly because confrontation is uncomfortable. There's a strange power in people who assume you won't make a scene, who think their social capital protects them. And sometimes the most effective response isn't shouting, it's documentation. Patience. Letting someone fully commit to their own mistake. Did I go too far? Maybe. I could have confronted her with footage privately. Could have escalated sooner. But part of me believes that if someone is bold enough to scale dishonesty publicly, then the correction should also be public. That's karma's favorite stage. So here's my question for you. Where's the line? When does patience become revenge? When does exposure become cruelty? And if you were in my shoes, would you have handled it quietly or rolled up to that meeting with 26 labeled bags? Drop your thoughts below. Tell me what you would have done. And if you've ever had someone smile at you while making your life harder, I want to hear that story too. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's 26 bags on a patio and a smile that never comes back.